Through one of the most important things I forgot about is keeping appropriate time, track of your time. I mentioned as far as how much time allotment that we have in painting an apartment, but I didn't talk about the timesheets. Timesheets are very important because our timesheets, what they do is they document your work, your performance, and really what we do is we show to the owners of this apartment building why, what you did in the apartment, how much time it took, and if it took a little extra, why did it take extra? So what I'm writing on here, actually the time that starts in painting this apartment started when I left from my last point of origin. So in this particular case, it started when I was back in the office, as I got done talking to you, when I was dispatched out to here. So your dispatch time is a key thing here. On this particular time, you should have received also a time clock. We bill in 6-minute increments, and you should have a copy of a time clock like this. So every 6 minutes is a tenth of an hour. So we mark our timesheets at 0.1, 0.2, 0.3, and if you know your multiples of 6, that's the key here. So, for instance, like 18 minutes after the hour, or let's just say right now we're looking at 10 o'clock, so it's 18 minutes after 10. It'd be 10.3 would be the time. So kind of study your clock here. We were dispatched from the office. I'm right at 10.1, so it's about 6 minutes after 10. It's currently 10.3, so we're kind of moving along here. I just wrote on here that we're en route to the apartment for painting. My dispatch time was 10:01. My complex building number and apartment's written on here with the date. Put my name Dave right on here, and my employee number is 50. Not all the temporary guys will have employee numbers, but you put on here. And this is how you get paid also. So documentation is very important to this particular situation. So I wrote on here as en route to the apartment complex, which is a key thing. This is what we call a multitask. When we move into an apartment building and we have a lot of different things we're going to do, such as the painting in here, we kind of go off a multitask. This is more of a single-use work order where we have one single task, for instance, fixing a toilet or fixing a refrigerator. We utilize this form here. On the back side of the single task multi-order, all your coding, your important coding, because we have to code what we're going to be doing in this apartment. My first step in coming to this apartment and figuring out what I need to do is we got kind of our equipment set up here. We brought the equipment in from out my truck, and we're getting set up here. The first thing we're going to do is we're going to assess this apartment to see what we need to do. I'm not sure how the lighting is in here, but we've kind of dimmed down the blinds so that we weren't having the light coming in affecting our camera shooting. Many times, you'll see, I'll grab this here, many times halogen lights are needed for when the areas are dark, if we're painting at night during a turn, or even just brightening up the walls, because on a dark day, having adequate light is very key to making sure that you have a good coat of paint on the walls here. This particular apartment is kind of one other thing I should note. On the way over here, we noticed that our 2-bedroom apartment was already painted. So we need to reassess our time allotment on here. And once again, I pull out my handy-dandy paint policy and I look under forest view. And our 1-bedroom is now cut down to 6 hours. So we lose an hour in that. So we have a 6 hour, and that 6 hours starts from our dispatch time from the office there. So we're already a few minutes into this whole process, but we're doing that. So the first thing to do is to take a look around this apartment to find out what we need to do. In many situations, such as apartment turns, when we're going through mass move, as we term it here, a lot of times the supervisor will walk through the apartment, and we don't do spot painting. Spot painting is, for instance, there's a mark on the wall, and we take our brush and we just go like this and do it, and then move and go here. We don't. It's a no-no in our company. Basically, what we do is we assess the wall, and if the wall needs to be painted, we paint the entire wall, or we basically leave it alone. There may be some situations, very few, where we just basically touch it and move on, but typically it's the whole wall or nothing. When our supervisor goes through during mass move, a lot of times what you'll find is we're kind of going from apartment to apartment to apartment, and we call that mass move, and we'll have a maintenance crew, a painting crew, etc. A lot of times with the maintenance supervisor, we'll take regular tape or even blue tape and put tape on the wall. So when you walk into this apartment, you'll see a piece of tape stuck on the wall here, and that means he wants this wall, whereas that wall there didn't have a piece of tape on it, so that that wall doesn't need to be painted. So you kind of have to look at and review your current situation. So we're going to be tackling this wall here with that piece of tape. And we got a couple different scenarios. First of all, let me back up to, we're going to assess this apartment. So I'm going to take my clipboard and I'm going to put it on here and assess the apartment. We got to take a look and see what we got going as far as the different scenarios. I'm looking along here, and things I'm looking for is I'm looking along the borders of the trim. If you notice on this trim here, it's kind of unacceptable. We got some paint on this woodwork. So basically, we have paint on window trim. And I'm going to put LR for living room. We have a number of different abbreviations. Assess the heat register, look around edges. Nooks and crannies are the big thing. I'm going to have the camera guy kind of swing around me. And here's an area that I really want to kind of point out. And he can kind of scan up and down. But if you get a good angle on this, you look up at the top here, and we have quite a bit of paint on this trim work. I already, from here to here, you can tell that I already worked a little bit on cleaning up this paint, but this is something that's unacceptable in our company. Once again, no paint on the woodwork. You got to remember that. For getting this paint off, I'll just give you a quick rendition. Once again, I like using Crud Cutter. I do it, spray a little bit on the green scratchy pad, and basically I very lightly kind of rub the paint woodwork. You don't want to push too hard with this green scratchy pad, because if you push too hard, you start taking the finish off. And if you don't push hard enough, you can't get it off. But you also have to watch it as far as pushing against the wall. And you can see the paint's kind of coming off on this green scratchy pad. So you I usually like to do my paint clean ahead of time, because one of the common things is the paint was there before I started. Well, it doesn't fly in this company. We need to get that cleaned off. We want a nice clean edge along here. One of the things, as you see, it's coming off there, and it needs a little bit more work. Let me grab one of my other tools here. This tool I like for breaking the bond between the woodwork and the paint. It provides a nice clean edge, and it helps, it's another tool I use for getting some of the paint off. But you can see it's cleaning up there pretty good. It really doesn't take that long to take the paint off. But that's what I use my blue edger for, is to kind of break the bond and assist me with cleaning up the paint. So we're getting this cleaned off, and one of the important painting processes is a little trying not to bond the paint with the woodwork. You got two separate surfaces here. You got a wood surface and the drywall surface, and those two surfaces are two completely different animals. And the goal of painting is not combining or bonding those two surfaces, but you want a nice clean edge. It's cleaning up real fast there. So I'll make an assessment. If you look down here, I got a bad drip on this wall right there. And then you can kind of see there's paint right where I'm pointing here. There's paint up on the ledge of this woodwork. There's some paint there. And then also, if you look real close, I don't know if the camera can pick this up, but some people indicate that they don't need to tape. You don't need to tape your woodwork because you can do a lot better job, it's a lot faster, etc. But when you don't tape, if you look close here, you spray. When you roll the walls, you actually get a spray or a mist that comes off the roller, and you start getting all this little spray that comes on the woodwork here. So on this particular apartment, at one point in time, somebody decided not to do the taping on here. So, once again, for cleaning this stuff up, kind of just running the green scratchy pad, and I just use my thumbnail and kind of push down on the top of that. And once again, we have a little bit of bonding going on between the wall and the woodwork, and I break that bond with my blue edger here, and I go along and just kind of clean that up. Once you break that bond, it seems to clean up a little more too. But getting that all off there, and it's cleaning right off there. So this helps all those little strips and stuff, and we have quite a bit of paint along here. So there we go, it comes right off. Just real carefully get all these drips off here. So we're cleaning up cleaning that up. So we kind of need to run around and get all this paint cleaned off this trim. When it's real bad, basically our philosophy is, or our policy is, when you go in the apartment, you know, we mark down, we track cleaning the paint off the woodwork differently than we do the apartment, because we don't utilize, or you don't allow, that time is not counted against you. So what we do is clean paint off apartment, clean paint off trim. If you notice, I carry my clipboard right along with me, and as I go, I'm logging down my time, I'm kind of logging down what I'm doing. Good rule of thumb is kind of write down about 5 minutes of what you got going on each hour is the rule of thumb. So I'm writing on here, clean trim with paint. When you come across apartments with, I guess, an extraordinary amount of paint, one of the things that we want to know from the office standpoint is who did the apartment before, because we're always looking to see. When you do your timesheet, this goes into our permanent records, and we know who painted the apartment. And when we have situations where there's a lot of paint on the woodwork, we need to go find out and talk to that person that did the painting before you, and to assess them and talk to them as far as, you know, you got to remember, keep that paint off the woodwork. Yeah. Well, a little bit of technical difficulty there, but we're back up and running. Once again, I think I left off there. I was talking about cleaning off the trim. The back side of your single task work order here, you get categories. All the work that you do in this apartment is important. Painting is kind of simple because it's all painting. It's categorized as a P. But there's one other item on here. It's called PT. It says prep for painting. Now that doesn't include putting tape on. The prep for painting is primarily just to identify how much time was spent cleaning off the woodwork and getting this unit ready so that when we're done, we have a nice, clean cut apartment. So I'm looking through here and once again doing a little prep time on, I'm assessing the apartment still. But PT is for prep time and primarily has to do with just taking paint off the woodwork. So I'm going to continue my assessment of the apartment and looking through a couple other things we're looking for is we call it roller bumps. So when you're rolling the wall and you accidentally bump the ceiling and you get like a roller bump on the ceiling here. I don't see any roller bumps around here, but if there were some roller bumps, I'd mark it right on my board here, and we'll show you how to take care of those roller bumps once we get going here. And so I'm making a full assessment. I'm looking at the heat registers in the apartment. I'm looking at the floor. I'm looking at the trim work, the light fixture covers here around the thermostat. I'm kind of doing a full assessment of all the different areas in this apartment. And I won't bring you in here right now, but I walked through the bedroom, and I've kind of already done my assessment of the apartment here. And our next steps, so number one, we assess the apartment, and we do an assessment on there. Number two, next thing to do is prep this apartment. We need to get it ready for paint and get all our different things that we need to do ready. So we do an assessment of the apartment. Next is the prep for paint. So I'm going to write down prep for paint. Once again, my handy-dandy clipboard here was a good tool for logging in my time as I go. One of the key things is making sure you log your time as you go. We got a lot of little sayings around here, and that's one of them. Prep for painting. Okay, prep for painting. We need to do a few other things here. Okay, log that down. I'm just going to set that down. One of the primary things in prepping for paint is to go through and get everything ready. This is where my tool belt comes into play. Pull out screwdriver. Screwdriver comes in real handy. I put it in my regular size here, and for the outlet covers, basically one of the things is to go through and simply pull off all the outlet covers. And the most efficient way to do this is you drop your outlet cover right on the floor right before the outlet. You don't want to be putting all these in a pile or moving them over the kitchen cabinet. You want to drop it right where it is. And if you notice, the outlet plate cover is face down. The reason you put it face down, in case there is some spray or whatnot, it keeps the face of that outlet all clean. Next thing I have here, and I don't know if the light's going to blind out. Once again, the reason I got a versatile screwdriver here is so I can easily switch out my blade here rather than having to look for another one. And whoever painted this before didn't remove this paint cover. They basically left it on here. And some of these cable plates, So these cable plates are kind of long, so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to back this out a little bit, plus it's hooked in the back here. I'm just going to back this up so it's kind of out of the way. I'm not going to get paint on it. Got that done. I'm pulling off. I'm going to do the wall over here that I'm doing. Once again, I got some paint on this cover, and we'll have to clean up these outlet covers prior to putting them back on because I got some paint. But sometimes too, these covers stick to the wall. Kind of the method for getting them off, I'll show you here, is just take your regular screwdriver and just pop it off like that. Once again, we lay it down. This would be before we put the tarps down. So we pop off heat register covers, or the outlet covers, I mean. The next thing here is we have a blind on this window. Now this is an inside mount blind, so we don't need to pull it down. If this was an outside mount, which means it's mounted on the wall and there's no trim on here, this blind would have to be taken down. So you need to assess the blinds, and if part of the prepping, if the wood was on the outside, I'd pull the blind down and I'd kind of move it in the middle of the room here, so it's kind of out of the way. Basically, you want to do a work pattern right around where you're sitting up there, setting up here. Okay, so we got some basic prepping done there. Next thing, taping. Taping is a key factor in this whole process. Once again, I whip out my 1-inch tape. Now, when we go into prepping a unit here, one of the things we want to do is making sure we have the same color paint. Now, one of the things you'll have in your training here is you should have a board. And it'll show you there's three different types of paint. Actually, you have different kinds of paint, you have different colors of paint, you have different sheen. Sheen is the shininess of the paint. And the whole thing is making sure that we use the same color paint on the walls that we've been using. We don't switch colors. If you have a color switch, it needs to have authorization. So you need to take a look and see what you have. But you should have a sample board there showing you the different sheens. Basically, the sheen is a shiny, once again, it's flat, and we typically don't use flat. We have an eggshell. Which is kind of a eggshell is a little bit shinier and flat, and then we have a semi-gloss, and then there's actually a gloss. Typically in our apartments we'll use eggshell. Some of our units have semi-gloss, which is a little bit shinier. But we want to make sure that we have the same color sheen. And taping an apartment is real key. The key you want to do is making sure you're not getting paint on the woodwork. Now, when we're using the same color paint, it's not your woodwork. You can overlap your paint a bit more. And basically what I do is I start, and you put a tape, and I don't know if the camera can zoom in here, but I'll put it and I run my finger down. If you notice, the tape is actually hanging over on the wall, probably about 1/16 of an inch. I don't have it taped just to the edge of the wall, I have it overlapping actually on the wall, because once again, we're using the same color paint, so it's not that critical. But if you notice, you look on this bond there, I got a nice tight seal all the way around there. I don't see any black gaps or anything along there. It's nice and tight, and it overlaps on the wall about 1/16 of an inch. That's what we want to see. The top and bottom are not that critical because we can't see, but you do have to use nice even. And once again, you notice I pull it all the way out. I tack it, as I call it. I tack it in the middle where I want it, and then I just run my finger. And basically, run it down, and I do it. Pretty simple, real fast taping. On a heat register, we get two different things that usually are below the wall. There's the heat register, and then there's also the trim. As far as the heat register, what I'll usually do, if you notice there's a gap between this heat register and the wall. Now here I have some crusty, thick stuff, which, the whole thing is to keep this gap looking good. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to take my edger here, and I'm just going to kind of clean off that crusty stuff. Looks so much better. We want to maintain this gap between the heat register and the wall. So I just did a little clean up there, which makes it look a lot better. It's not a lot cleaner look. That thing too, sometimes you need to wipe off these heat registers if they're real dirty because the tape won't stick to them. Now on taping this heat register, what I'm going to do is I'm going to leave a little bit of gap between the heat register and the wall. I'm not going to overlap it here because there's a significant gap here, and I think the bristles on my brush will be able to get down. Once again, I roll the tape out, I do a tack, and I run, I roll, so it really doesn't take that long. And I'm just running this along the wall. For that purpose, I'm going to go like that. But I got a gap between there and I'll leave it there. The next thing I'm going to do on here, there's a couple different ways. You could run this so that you have 3 pieces of tape. But once again, I use 1-inch tape. The simple reason it's a lot cheaper than the 2-inch, and that's why we stick with the 1. So you can run that, and it's easy to run three rolls like I have there. The second method, which is almost just effective, you just run your tarp right up there. You just do a quick tack down. The heat register walls will take a little bit longer time than the woodwork because it's a little bit bigger thing there. But so basically, you notice we're getting two tarps here. Now I'm going to swing it around over to this wall over here. Make a little room. As far as taping, once again, the key is staying organized as you go here. Key for taping, once again, you mark it, you tack it, where you're going, you do it. Oops. And I got a little black, so I got a little black showing, so I pull the tape up again, I retack it, and I run my finger. Nice tight seal along the woodwork. That's what we're looking for. Once again, I go tack and I run my finger. And actually, this is pretty fast. You can tape a unit off. One of the key points, and if you notice, I don't know if you can see on there, but I don't have any black gaps. I have a little overlapping, about 1/16 of an inch. Then I would tape off this here too, and run that through. That's how you tape off the woodwork there. So back to the wall I'm working on. Let me just finish up putting this tarp in place here. Just basically covering this heat register. So I'm trying to eliminate any drips that come down on the heat register. As far as time allotment goes, basically I figure I shoot for about an hour a room. You go through, you tape a room, and then you paint it, and then you pull it. Tape, paint, pull. That's kind of my combination there. You don't ever want to tape a whole apartment off, and then let it sit, and then come back, because what happens is the tape starts loosening up, starts letting up, and you don't have a full bond on the tape there. So you notice I'm starting to apply the leapfrog method here with the tarps. I got 2 tarps combined there, and then I need the 3rd tarp for my system. And I'm going to put that 3rd tarp so it's kind of adjoining my other 2 tarps. So I got, basically they're all combined there. And as I mentioned before, one of the critical things in getting the paint is making sure it's mixed up properly. Now one of our company policies is when we buy new paint, you should have a Sharpie in your pocket there. And the one thing we do on our paint bucket is we put the project name on the top of it, put a date on it, so we know how old this product is, because we typically want to use the oldest product first. Put that, and then as far as this goes, this is a bone white. And on this, there's 3 as I mentioned. There's a Benjamin Moore, it's the brand name. The color is bone white. We write that right in the top. And then this is a semi-gloss enamel, so it's a little bit shinier paint. So I'm going to write semi on there. So when this bucket gets stored away, we know it's porous steel. Today's 5703, it's bone white, it's semi-gloss. And then this is a super craft. This is the grade of paint. It's how thick the paint is. So all buckets you have should be properly labeled. As soon as we get the bucket, first thing we do, the maintenance supervisor or coordinator will log that name right on the bucket. On these 5-gallon buckets, this one's been opened already. But the key is to mixing this paint up. They do have pretty good seals, especially when they're brand new buckets. The key is to get this thing shooken up. And when the buckets are full, they should come shaken, because when we order up paint, we make sure it's shaken. But on this particular one, we want to make sure that we get this, all the solids that are on the bottom of this bucket mixed around. We've got a good seal here. You have to make sure, because you don't want any paint spills. And you can turn it upside down and you shake it, and the whole thing is to get the thick stuff off the bottom there. So these 5-gallon buckets, you can literally spend 5 or 10 minutes getting this thing all shaken up and stirred and whatnot. Now, if this was a brand new bucket, I pull up my knife. Once again, be careful with these razor blades. They do slice skin pretty easy. Basically, one downward stroke, and you cut each one of these tabs in that fashion. Go all the way around the bucket, and then you're able to take the top off. Basically, it pops right off. So I pop this top off here, and one of the things I'm going to do is, you notice there's a lot of paint on here. So I'm going to grab my brush, and if you leave this paint, if we're going to be using this paint quite a bit, basically I'll take this off and I'll just do a little edging right along the edge here. So you notice I got a 3-inch brush. See how big my stroke is on that? I get a nice wide run. You know, and I'm looking, and I'm getting all the loose paint off this cover because it's going to dry. So I can get, and we won't be able to get our roller in above the window here. So we're going to have to hand brush this. You could do a little bit. I got one nice advantage. I'm a little taller here, so it works out a little bit better. So if we're getting a ceiling here, you notice I kind of angle the brush in. I do nice even strokes. One of the biggest errors in painting that most people do is they run their brush way too dry. So you try to stretch out more paint than really they should, and then you start getting streaks in your wall. So there, I got that kind of painted up, and I got my cover cleaned off here. So I'm going to carefully set this over on my tarp there, because all paint buckets should always be on tarps. Got my thing there. Couple other things I failed to show in the prepping of the unit is nail holes. Nail holes are another thing. A lot of people tend to just take the spackle and then fill in the nail hole and just kind of rub it. The problem is that when you pound a nail into a wall, you get a ridge around the nail hole. So prior to putting the spackle in, what you should do is take your Phillips screwdriver. Nail holes. Nail holes are an important part of one of the prepping in apartments. And the thing you want to do is, you take your screwdriver. When you pound a nail in the wall, I don't know if I touched this already, you tend to get a ridge around where it's actually punks out of the wall. And when you paint over it, or if you just fill in the hole, you still have that punk mark that's there. So what I do is I take the Phillips screwdriver that I have right here in my pack. I put the Phillips end on it, and I give it a nice solid, whack. And what I do is I put an indentation, because I want the punking out of that wall, I want to push into place and get it out of there, so it's actually deeper than the wall surface. So you go through and basically hitting all the holes that we have here, and you kind of like this and feel it. And when it sticks out farther than the wall is, kind of just whack it in. So you go through and you hit all the little nail holes, and kind of be careful so you don't push it in too far. This happens to be plaster. Sheetrock's a little easier to work with. But basically, pump it. Part of the wall prep here. We got quite a few little marks on this wall. So basically, you push them in like that, so you kind of get the indentations going in. The next step in filling the holes is taking your joint compound. I like to use joint compound. And basically, I just take a little pinch, and I put the pinch in the hole, and I kind of rub it off. Fill it in the hole there. You want to make sure that you don't push, and once again, you're trying to fill the hole in, and if you rub it too hard, you want to get that wall surface as smooth as you can, so there's not an indentation, because we're trying to fill that in. So, kind of use all your little your fingers and stuff. You notice? Okay, that's a bigger hole, it's a little tougher. Might need 2 coats on that, but I'm filling in my holes, leaving kind of a little bit extra on that. So basically you run through the apartment, you fill all the holes. It's kind of a prep thing. Then you take a damp cloth and very carefully you want to wipe off all that extra